My name is Russell Lookadoo, President and Chief Strategist for HRchitecture. I'm the HR guy for small business. My firm exists to leverage my expertise and experience in human resources to help the small business owner achieve their dreams through effective use of their teams. The question of discrimination and unfairness is very much on the front burner of our consciousness these days. Discrimination includes race, of course, but it also includes a multitude of non-job related factors that can influence us in making workplace decisions. Leaders making decisions regarding hiring, promotion, performance evaluation, pay, and termination. In doing so, we need to be aware of, what we're not aware of. In other words, bless your heart, you cannot control yourself unless you become aware of the patterns and conditionings that have created our thought patterns. You have accepted and developed these patterns unintentionally. Let me give you two examples. When screens are placed in front of musicians auditioning for orchestras, it has been reported that the selection of females, when the judges cannot see the gender of the musician, the female acceptance was up 50%. An author in a study sent identical query letters to literary agents, 50 with the name Catherine and 50 with the name George. Catherine received 2 positive responses while George received 17. That's 8.5 times more favorable to the male author. The mind actually is like an iceberg. Most of the brain's operations are performed by the subconscious or the unconscious mind without the primary user, you, being aware that it happens. Emotion-based decisions that are subject to discrimination are rooted in this unconscious mind. We are programmed by repeated and reinforced experiences that deepen these neurochannels of brain activity. Paradoxically, smarter, faster thinking individuals may be more susceptible. I believe on the behavioral profiles, a high D or a high I may be more prone to unconscious bias than those that are high S's and high C's. Like increasing of emotional intelligence, it is possible to overcome these deeply rooted thought processes. Overcoming the challenges of unconscious bias begins with awareness. So let me outline 6 primary areas of unconscious bias. Number 1 is the affinity bias. This is also known as hiring in the mirror. People naturally see others like them and like themselves more than people they don't know. When we encounter a person that has something in common with us, we are likely to prefer those people than those for whom we have nothing in common. These traits can include race, gender, hair color, common hometowns, schools, or other things that create that instant connection. The affinity bias causes you possibly to avoid individuals that are different from yourself. So a strategy to overcome unconscious bias is to include other people with different characteristics in your circle of decision making. Number 2, I want to talk about the confirmation bias. In the confirmation bias, you seek out or respond to information that you agree with your beliefs. And contrarily, you discount or avoid information that is contrary to your belief system. That piece of information can cause you to bypass this additional useful information. A study was performed where 100 resumes were sent to potential employers. The first resume was sent in with the name Adam, the second with the name Mohammed. Adam received 12 interviews, Mohammed only received 4. That's a 300% increase in favor of Adam. In the third bias, the Horn's halo bias, it's important to understand this one is often temporal in nature. First impressions and last impressions are often over-considered in making decisions. In addition, a singular event that took place in the course of a relationship may overshadow other work or job-related performance issues. Halo biases have been shown to be active when in a study where men were judged independently as either attractive or unattractive or less than attractive, the men who were judged as attractive were 13% higher paid than men who were not judged attractive. Another study showed that prettier, thinner, or lighter skinned women were more likely to have their loans approved than turned down than women who were not lighter skinned, skinny, or considered pretty. Overall, this bias can be overcome through grid scored interviews and questions in an interview that are specifically job related. The fourth bias is called Outgroup Homogeneity bias. The Outgroup Homogeneity bias is a belief that those who are in your group are very diverse, but the people outside your group are all the same. For example, all green people are obviously lazy and dishonest and from another planet. This is perpetuated by blonde jokes, ethnic jokes, and blackface acting. The Outgroup Homogeneity bias can be present when a picture of Lawrence Fishburne is printed instead of Samuel L. Jackson in an article about Samuel L. Jackson, or in a case where a picture of Reese Witherspoon was printed instead of Carrie Underwood, which was the correct picture. Just in the last few days, two politicians in a social media post regarding John Lewis's death used a picture of Elijah Cummings, another black civil rights leader, instead. Well-intended, but unconsciously biased. Defense against outgroup homogeneity bias starts with having a diverse group of contacts. Intentionally seek out people that aren't like you and learn about their cultures, their backgrounds, their religious traditions, and the individuals who they are. The more you do that, the less likely that outgroup homogeneity will take effect. While I was working with a large corporation in a southern city, senior leadership intentionally addressed this outgroup bias by asking us, in fact, requiring us to have lunch with a black person at least once a month. A small thing, but it broke that barrier of, oh, they versus us, them versus me. The fifth one I want to talk about is groupthink bias. In groupthink bias, we all swim in similar schools. Birds of a feather flock together. The groupthink bias can be reinforced by strong peer pressure to get along and not rock the boat. We've all seen that picture of one person's perspective seeing a number on its side as a 6, the person on the other side seeing the number as a 9. That bias can be exacerbated if the leader takes one side and the person on the other side of the ladder doesn't want to rock the boat. It can also be exacerbated when a majority of the people are seeing it from one side versus the other. In a significant psychological experiment known as the ASCH conformity effect, a piece of paper was given to everyone that had one vertical line on the left and 3 vertical lines on the right. The investigation asked which of the lines is the same height on the right as the line on the left. Paid actors were told to select the wrong answer and to group together against the person who selected the right answer repeatedly. Over time, the person ignored their own judgment and chose the wrong length line. Possible defenses to groupthink bias are to empower people to speak up, or having a designated devil's advocate to offer counter-argument. Leaders need to be aware when the groupthink effect is happening and intervene by asking people to stop, listen, or give people more time to explain their position. They also need to make sure that they're not siding prematurely with one side or the other. Another defense is to have what's called secret ballots for decision making, so that the majority, and this happens a lot on juries, that you can vote without any peer pressure with a secret ballot. The sixth one is called biased recall. Due to biased recall, we tend to remember things we agree with or that we liked and found pleasant and block out disagreeable information. First impression, overimpression, and recency can outweigh the validity of the whole context of the information. Solution to treating recall bias are contemporaneous record keeping or journaling, particularly in performance management. That will help you avoid biased recall. The overall blind spot bias, having these biases, and there are others, but the effect is to be aware of these biases. In fact, the intent of this conversation is to make you aware they exist. The very act of thinking about your unconscious bias is a defense to avoid making decisions with these biases. There are 10 key tools to avoid unconscious bias. One is increased awareness that we're talking about today. Constructive creativity, widen your circles, measure performance, not just assess, anonymize when possible decision-making information, slow down, question your thinking, count everything, measure everything, and check your language. Positive images and contemporaneous record keeping are also key to avoiding unconscious bias. The issue needs to be addressed. Unconscious bias can be crippling to any business, particularly a small business. Negative impacts include lower productivity, lower morale, disengagement, unethical behavior, and litigation. Positive effects of controlling unconscious bias, including innovation, higher morale, engagement, improves your reputation, and improves your profitability. Albert Einstein is reported to have said, "You cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. You must stand on a higher ground." The benefits of minimizing unconscious bias are obvious and profound. Please contact me and we can create together awareness training for your business. Nobody wants to be discriminatory, and this is why we often are. Have a great day, and I look forward to hearing from you.